Hello, Hwa Chong students. I'm Mr. Tan. Welcome back. Okay, I believe you have already seen my last video on how to do well in the DRQ question in the Hwa Chong TA2 So this second video, right, will complete the recording and will teach you how to score well in the higher order skills question, the last 18 marks. Now, here are some general tips basically for all case study questions that you must answer the question, of course. Okay, you must answer the question. But more importantly, you must answer the question from the economic perspective. The use of econs, right, should be clear to the marker by the time he comes to the end of your question. Okay, you must clearly use an economic framework. You should always try to include some case evidence into your econs analysis whenever possible. Now, I hope from the last video you have seen how I've always tried to incorporate case evidence plus the econs explanation. So make sure for higher order skill questions, you also do the same thing. The fourth bullet point states that when it comes to DRQs, okay, those explain, comment, compare, if they need you to draw a graph, right, to get all the marks, they always state with the help of a diagram. Okay, so if they state with the help of a diagram for DRQs, if you do not use a graph, you will never get the full marks. But when it comes to higher order skills question, right, the questions will not prompt you to draw a graph. The rule of the thumb is that if you feel that a graph would show analytical depth, go ahead and draw. But the rule is that every time you draw a graph, please explain the graph. You need both to get the marks. The first higher order skills question is this: assess to what extent the change in Facebook's profit in figure 2 will continue in the future. Now, to put the context of this question for you to understand, let's look at extract 2, paragraph 3. It states that Facebook took in a large slice of the online advertising market revenue and its profits soared, initially tripling in 2010. But moving forward, whether it's going to maintain the same profit growth rate is uncertain. So you can interpret the question as that there was soaring growth in profit in the past, but will this growth continue in the future? So let's think aloud about the economic theory behind this. This question asks for the change in profits, right? So what is the economic theory behind a firm's profit? So you have learned theoretically that profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. So when there's a change in profit, right, this change can either be an increase or a decrease. So total revenue basically increases or decreases when demand increases or decreases. Total cost, right, when it changes, okay, is basically about economies of scale or diseconomies of scale. So to get all the 8 marks, right, you should explain a bit of both. So let me suggest a 2-part approach to this question. Part 1, explain the current change in profits in figure 2 using econs, and part 2, predict using economic theory and case evidence whether this change in profits can continue in the future. So let's look at part 1 first. Let me show you how to integrate the case evidence with the economic explanation, as I was saying to you earlier. Extract 2, right, states that in the early years, right, Facebook encountered growing pains. Slow revenue growth and huge costs incurred from acquisitions pressured the firms into losses. But after a while, Facebook managed to find avenues to generate sales. So in less than 8 years, it has grown to host about so many million users, 300 million daily photo uploads, and of course 9 million applications. All these are case evidence. You don't need to quote the whole chunk, but you should state a bit of this in your answer. But what is the economic explanation? Now let me latch on to the point about Facebook have seen an increase in demand. This will teach you that the best way to inject econs, right, is to use a diagram to show that the Facebook has basically faced a higher AR curve over the years. And you have learned, right, when the AR shifts to the right, when the AR increases, it can earn subnormal. It used to earn losses, but from subnormal, it can now earn supernormal profit. So you draw a graph with the AR curve shifting to the right. And how do you explain the AR increase? It could be a change in taste and preferences towards Facebook. I mean, I'm from Generation X. I used to recall, I joined Facebook in late 2008. Okay, I had a Friendster account. Then I moved to Facebook. By now, I think you use, right, were not heard of Friends. You may heard of Friendster, but you never had. But I remember that, why I joined Facebook in 2008 is because I was very curious on how my primary school and my secondary school friends are doing, because I noticed that I saw some of their accounts in Facebook, so I just add them in as friends. And remember, I've not seen them for about 20 over years, so I was just curious to see how they are doing, where they are at. So I'm part of this change in the taste and preference towards Facebook. Of course, after a while I realized personally that they keep spamming their pictures of their holiday, their food they eat, and the kids, they spam so much all the time until I can't take it. I decided to block them from my Facebook feed. Okay, so that represents my adventure to Facebook. So I was part of this change in taste and preferences. So part 2. Given that it has changed from subnormal to supernormal, can you predict whether this change in profits can continue in the future? So first thing to take note is that this question is asking for the continued increase. So even if there's a slowdown, Facebook can still be earning supernormal profit. It's just increasing at a slower rate. The key case evidence for this part 2 is to extract 4 last paragraph that says that social audiences can be fickle and young people can move to other social networks. I understand, okay, from my students that nowadays, people of your age, you have switched away from Facebook. You have now moved to things like Snapchat, things like Twitter, things like Instagram. So it shows that this change in taste and preference towards Facebook can easily switch the other way. Okay, the entry of new a smaller startup could upsurge Facebook eventually and capture the market. Of course, we had the benefit of hindsight, right? Those students who did this in 2017 would never have heard of what's going on now in 2018. Now you have learned what is Cambridge Analytica. You know that there's a data leak on Facebook that Mark Zuckerberg had to explain in Congress. So that realization of data leak could contribute to this movement away from Facebook into other social networks. So the profits of Facebook is expected to take a hit because of this data leak incident in 2018. So like I said, right, if people are leaving Facebook, the demand will decrease. Hence, this will slow down the previous sharp jump in profits. There's no need to draw a graph again because it's the opposite of the previous graph we have drawn earlier. So to complete this question, note that we have not said anything about cost, right? So if firms, the theory behind firms' profit is total revenue minus total cost, you should always talk a bit about cost. So it's good to say that as Facebook continuously expand, okay, as it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, it bought WhatsApp, it bought Instagram, it may run into diseconomies of scale, which will also decrease its profits. You may give a brief explanation, an example of a diseconomies of scale that might apply to this Facebook. And a possible evaluation is that Facebook might be able to continually innovate and engage in cost cutting to mitigate this. So let's talk about a possible conclusion. Facebook is conscious of its survival and has been engaging in mergers and acquisition to rejuvenate and to redevelop itself. So who knows, it might buy even Snapchat. Hence, profits should continue, but the growth, right, will likely be slowing down due to the emergence of these new startups and the fickle-mindedness of these users. Okay, of course, now with benefit of hindsight in 2018, you can say that the data leak will probably hurt their profits tremendously. Next question, and of course the last question on this case study, the last higher order skill question is, discuss the impacts on efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare from mergers and acquisitions in the online media industry. So as I was thinking a lot of this question, right, this is clearly a cause and effect. okay, the cost, the first thing that happens is the other mergers and acquisitions. They are asking for the impact of these on three criteria: efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare. The command word is discuss the impacts, meaning that you should consider both positive and negative impact on these three criteria: efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare. So let me think aloud about the economics theory that I will use for this question. Efficiency, right? There are basically three main efficiency criteria: allocative efficiency, which is AE; productive efficiency, which is PE; dynamic efficiency, which is DE. Equity, right, refers to the supernormal profits that are earned by the firms at the expense of higher prices faced by consumers. And of course, consumer welfare refers to consumer surplus and the quality of the product. So these terms should be in your analysis as much as possible. Now, a possible introduction to this 10-mark question is to clarify what mergers and acquisition implies. Facebook has acquired WhatsApp and Instagram, allowing it to grow much bigger and gaining more monopoly power. So this would have implications on efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare, which will be discussed in this answer. Here's my tip that I think every one of us, every tutor has basically said: try not to state the final stand in your introduction. This applies to both essays as well as 8 and 10 marks question for case studies. Put your final stand in your conclusion. So let's look at the first factor: efficiency and negative impact. Now, the economic theory states that in general, the greater the market dominance, the more the outcome will be allocatively inefficient. The theory behind it is, with larger market share, it will mean a more price inelastic demand. This allows the firm to charge a higher market price. You have learned this in your first year, right? The more price inelastic demand curve, the higher the price the firm should charge. Now, the thing about online media is that the marginal cost of allowing an additional advertiser to put up an advertisement on the social platform is almost zero. What this basically says that hard drive space and with all this cloud technology, right? All these space are basically the marginal cost, the zero cost. Okay, it is basically almost like a non-rival good. So the marginal cost of allowing an additional advertiser is almost zero. With the MC being almost zero, right, and the price being higher and higher, the gap between price and marginal cost can be very large. So this could worsen the allocative inefficiency. So if you have time, of course, you could draw a graph to illustrate this, the standard deadweight loss. However, okay, there's a possible positive impact for your balance. You have learned in economic theory, right, that a monopoly, even though it is usually allocatively inefficient, it can earn supernormal profits. And when it does, right, it has the ability to do R&D, research and development. Hence, by doing R&D, right, it may lead to a more dynamically efficient outcome. So the main case evidence you should use is extract 4, paragraph 2. I'll let you read the slide while I take a drink of water. So you can see that this paragraph, right, states that the profits can be a powerful incentive to innovate. We are done with the efficiency criteria. Let's look at the second criteria: equity and negative impact. Economic theory, right, states that monopoly power leads to the ability to retain supernormal profits in the long run due to the barriers to entry. Now, this may result in an unfair distribution of income between the firms and the consumers. The case evidence points towards first to strong barriers to entry, extract 2, paragraph 3. There's also case evidence of unfair distribution of income because the wealthiest person, right, the top 10 wealthiest person, one of them includes Facebook Zuckerberg, so they earn billions. So this could be a clue that there's some impact on it's unfair. Okay, it's inequitable because they are earning so much because of strong barriers to entry. However, this is a balanced view for equity. It is not necessarily true that large firms are always able to enjoy excessive profits all the time. The case evidence is in extract 4, last paragraph. These profits can come and go. Okay, small startups can upsurge big media firms. I mean, I recall, right, Friendster was so popular before Facebook, and somehow Facebook just came and then took away the market share. So all these profits may not last for long. And of course, theoretically, right, government can always tax such firms and redistribute the profits. So this can be a theoretical point. The final criteria, consumer welfare, economic theory. Now, it's important to be clear, consumers are not concerned about allocative efficiency per se, but they are concerned more about the price they pay for the good as well as the quality of good received. Monopoly power, right, allows the firm to capture some of the consumer surplus in the form of higher prices, which will make consumers worse off. That's the bad point about consumer welfare. On the other hand, right, if the firm is able to do R&D with a supernormal profits, it will improve the quality of good to the consumer. But take note of the uniqueness of this case study is that the consumer in this case is not the user of Facebook, but rather those who advertise on it. We try to teach you this by the titling the extract 3, right? Who are the customers of Facebook? The advertisers. So please avoid phrasing your answers describing consumer welfare as users on Facebook. It's actually the advertisers. The first thing to note is the negative outcome for advertisers. So the economic theory is that as digital media firms become larger and dominant, they might exploit advertisers by charging higher rates, leading to possible loss in consumer surplus. That's the theory. Okay, the case evidence is extract 4, paragraph 3. With dominance by Facebook, its advertisers now face steadily rising ad costs. So again, take note how I integrate the case evidence with the theory. That's how you must learn to do to get the marks for case studies. To have a balanced view, okay, the positive outcome is that no, you only need to make the case that it may not be necessarily true the advertiser will be worse off. You're basically a defense lawyer here. Okay, you just need to show reasonable doubt. Now, the case evidence extract 4, last paragraph, that larger firms can also be at risk to new startups who may not appear in head-on competition, but could suddenly come up with creative ideas that users will like and hence steal away many of the users. Now, this is the issue of contestability, which you have already learned before this video. And of course, there's still variety, right, with so much competition, and the quality of the products may therefore not be restricted. Now, here's the skill that you must learn. For 8 marks and 10 mark questions, right, if you're running out of time, which typically most of us face, you might be fine with having no introduction, but you definitely should have a conclusion to get your evaluation mark. So conclusion is where you justify a final stand. So here's a suggested conclusion. Okay, in the digital market, there are fewer barriers to entry, and new upstarts can even provide an innovative product to capture the market. Hence, the advantage of being dominant is actually greatly reduced. Consumers' competition, right, could still be high in the digital market because consumers' taste and preference change rather rapidly. So the point is this: all these long-term gain from being large may not be permanent. Okay, so that is the conclusion that you could have as a final step. Of course, this is the final slide. I'm aware that case studies, right, we are typically in a rush for time. Like I said earlier, we have about 1 hour, 7 minutes for each case study. So when it comes to the 8 marks and 10 mark question, you are definitely in a rush for time. So my advice to students is this: aim for breadth first before aiming for depth. That means if you look at this question, this 10 mark question, right, it is more important that you cover all 3 aspects: efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare. Make sure you cover at least one of each, okay, all 3. Forget about the graphs if you're running out of time, okay. If you have time, once you have the breadth, then you focus on depth. For example, drawing the graph to show the lack of allocative efficiency. So aim for breadth first. It is more important that you cover all 3 aspects rather than just draw a graph. If you're running out of time, forget about the graph, okay. And if really time is a constraint, right, you do not need positive and negative for each of the 3 criteria. Just make sure that at the end of the day, when the marker marks this question, this higher order skill question with 10 marks, there's at least 1 positive and 1 negative outcome throughout your answer. Meaning that, okay, for example, right, efficiency can be purely positive. That's fine. Okay, then your negative can either appear in equity or consumer welfare. Of course, if you have time, it's probably good to have positive and negative for each criteria. Okay, then it's very easy for you to get 10 upon 10. Okay, but running out of time, right? If you just have efficiency, equity, and consumer welfare, positive and negative, you will still get your a good level 2 marks. Okay, so I hope this video has helped you to acquire the skills. So to wrap it up, right? Remember, to do well in case studies, right? 3 things you must do. First thing, answer the question. Okay, most important, answer the question. Number 2, use econs framework. Use econs and analytical framework to tackle the question. Don't just quote from the case. And of course, the third point is make sure you use some case evidence in your analysis. So if you answer the question, if you use econs, if you use case evidence, there's no reason why you will not do well for case studies. So this is Mr. Tan again, signing off. Thank you for watching this video.